I sat at the bar, nervously peeling the label off my beer bottle. The noise around me faded into the background as I waited for Adele. My stepmother had never called me before, let alone asked to meet. My mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. The door of the bar swung open, and there she was. Adele walked in, turning heads as she moved gracefully through the room. Even though I didn't like her, I couldn't deny she was beautiful. She spotted me and made her way over, a serious look on her face. "Thanks for agreeing to meet me, Alex," she said, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, but her eyes held a hint of worry. "Sure," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's this all about?" She sat down, taking a moment to compose herself. "I have something important to tell you. It's about your father and Sandra." My stomach tightened. "What about them?" Adele sighed and looked down at her hands. "Your father is having an affair with Sandra." I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. "You must be joking." "I wish I were," she said, pulling a brown envelope from her purse and pushing it across the table. "I hired a private investigator. The photos are in there." With shaking hands, I opened the envelope and pulled out several large prints. There they were, my father and my wife, caught in intimate moments. My heart pounded in my chest as I felt my world collapsing around me. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Adele admitted. "I found a condom in your father's pocket 3 weeks ago. He doesn't need them with me." That's when I hired the detective. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My father, my own wife. How could they do this to me? I looked up at Adele, who was watching me with a mix of sympathy and determination. "I didn't want to tell you like this, but you needed to know," she said softly. "Why are you telling me now?" I asked, still trying to process everything. "Because we need to decide what to do," she replied. "I don't want to lose your father, but I can't just let this go." I nodded slowly, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. "What do you have in mind?" Adele leaned in, her voice low and steady. "I have a plan. It won't be easy, and it might get messy, but they need to face the consequences of their actions." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision ahead. "All right, I'm in. What do we do next?" Adele smiled, a glint of determination in her eyes. "First, we need to gather more evidence. Then we'll confront them together. They won't see it coming." As we sat there, plotting our next move, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief. For the first time in weeks, I had a clear direction. It was time to take control and make them pay for what they had done. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't concentrate at work, couldn't sleep at night. The images of Sandra and my father haunted me, filling my thoughts with anger and hurt. Adele and I met a few times to discuss our plan, but each meeting only seemed to deepen my sense of betrayal. One evening, Adele called and asked me to come over to her place. She said she had more evidence, more proof of the affair. As much as I dreaded seeing more, I knew I needed to understand the full extent of their betrayal. When I arrived, Adele greeted me at the door. She looked tired, the stress of the situation evident on her face. She led me to the living room, where a stack of photos and papers was spread out on the coffee table. "These came in today," she said, gesturing to the table. "I thought you should see them." I sat down, my heart heavy. I picked up the first photo. It was another image of Sandra and my father, this time in a different hotel room. The look on their faces was one of pure bliss, completely unaware of the damage they were causing. "How could they do this?" I muttered, more to myself than to Adele. "I don't know," she replied softly, "but we need to figure out our next move." As I flipped through the photos, my anger grew. Each picture was a knife to the heart, each one a reminder of the trust they had shattered. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I threw the stack of photos back onto the table and leaned back, covering my face with my hands. "I can't believe this is happening," I said, my voice cracking. Adele reached out and placed a hand on my shoulder. "I know it's hard, Alex, but we have to stay strong. We need to confront them and make them see the pain they've caused." I nodded, trying to gather my thoughts. "So what's the plan?" Adele took a deep breath. "We need to catch them in the act. We already have these photos, but we need something more concrete, something undeniable. And how do we do that?" I asked, looking up at her. I've already taken care of that, she said, a determined look in her eyes. I have the investigator place cameras in a few more locations. If they're still meeting, we'll have all the evidence we need. I was both relieved and anxious. When do we get the footage? Tomorrow, she replied. The investigator will bring it over, and we'll review it together. The thought of seeing more of their betrayal made my stomach turn, but I knew it was necessary. We needed to confront them with irrefutable proof, something they couldn't deny or talk their way out of. The next day felt like an eternity. Every minute dragged on, the anticipation gnawing at my nerves. When evening finally came, I drove over to Adele's place, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and determination. The investigator was already there when I arrived. He was a tall, serious-looking man with a no-nonsense demeanor. He greeted me with a nod and handed over a small box of DVDs. These are the latest recordings, he said. I think you'll find what you're looking for. Adele and I sat down on the couch, the investigator setting up the DVD player. As the first video started, I felt a lump in my throat. There they were again, Sandra and my father, oblivious to the hidden cameras capturing their every move. How could they? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Adele squeezed my hand, offering silent support. We watched in silence, each new scene deepening the wound. By the time the last video ended, I felt a mix of rage and sorrow that threatened to overwhelm me. We have what we need, Adele said quietly. It's time to confront them. I nodded, my jaw clenched. Let's do it. They need to know that we won't stand for this. As we planned our confrontation, I felt a sense of resolve settling over me. It was time to take back control, to face the truth head on. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Adele by my side, I knew we could handle whatever came next. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across Adele's living room. We sat at the dining table, our heads bent over the scattered photos and notes. The reality of what we were about to do weighed heavily on us, but we were determined. It was time to confront them. All right, let's go over this one more time, Adele said, her voice steady but filled with tension. We need to make sure everything is perfect. I nodded, still trying to wrap my head around the situation. So we meet them at the cafe. We show them the photos, the videos, everything. And then what? Demand an explanation. I don't even know what I want from them. Adele sighed, rubbing her temples. We need to make them understand the pain they've caused. They need to see the consequences of their actions. It's not just about us confronting them, Alex. It's about making them face the truth. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of her words. But what if they deny it? What if they try to lie their way out of it? They won't be able to, she replied firmly. We have all the evidence. They can't escape this. I picked up one of the photos, staring at the smiling faces of Sandra and my father. I just can't believe it. I thought we were happy. I thought. My voice trailed off, the words catching in my throat. Adele reached across the table and took my hand. I know. It hurts. But we have to do this. For both of us. We spent the next hour going over every detail, planning our confrontation down to the last minute. The cafe was a neutral place, somewhere public where they couldn't cause a scene. We decided on a quiet corner booth, away from prying eyes, but close enough to the exit if things went south. As we wrapped up our plans, Adele looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of determination and sadness. Are you ready for this? I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar mix of anger and hurt welling up inside me. Yeah, I am. Let's do it. The next day, we arrived at the cafe early, finding our spot and settling in. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a reminder of the betrayal I was about to confront. Adele sat across from me, her expression calm but tense. She had always been stronger than me in these situations, and I drew strength from her resolve. We didn't have to wait long. Sandra walked in first, looking around nervously before spotting us. My father followed close behind, his face a mask of confusion. As they approached the table, I could see the questions in their eyes. What's going on? My father asked, taking a seat. Sandra sat down beside him, her eyes darting between Adele and me. We need to talk, Adele said, her voice steady. She slid the envelope across the table. About this. My father hesitated, then opened the envelope. As he pulled out the photos, his face paled. Sandra gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. What? What is this? Sandra stammered, her voice shaking. It's the truth, I replied, my anger bubbling to the surface. You two have been sneaking around, and we know everything. My father looked up, his eyes filled with shock and guilt. Alex, it's not what it looks like. Don't lie to me. I snapped, slamming my hand on the table. We have the photos, the videos. We know what you've been doing. Sandra started to cry, her tears flowing freely. I'm so sorry, Alex. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did, I said, my voice breaking. Both of you did. Adele leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. We didn't come here to hear excuses. We came here to tell you that we know, and we won't let you get away with this. There was a long silence, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. My father and Sandra sat there, their guilt and shame evident on their faces. For the first time, they were forced to face the consequences of their actions. As we stood to leave, I felt a strange sense of relief. The confrontation was painful, but it was also necessary. It was a step towards healing, towards moving on from the betrayal that had shattered our lives. And as we walked out of the cafe, I knew that we had done the right thing. The confrontation at the cafe was just the beginning. Adele and I had more planned, and now it was time to set everything in motion. We needed to make sure our spouses felt the full impact of their betrayal, just as we had. The day after the confrontation, Adele and I met again at her house. The air was thick with tension and determination. We sat at the kitchen table, going over our plan once more. Okay, so we have the photos and videos ready to send. Adele said, her eyes focused and determined. But we need to do it in a way that leaves no doubt. They need to see it from every angle, feel it from every perspective. I nodded, feeling the same resolve. We send it to their closest friends and family, people who matter to them, people who will be shocked and disappointed. Adele agreed. Yes, exactly. It has to be public enough to make an impact, but controlled enough to keep us from being dragged down with them. We spent the next few hours preparing everything. Adele was meticulous, making sure each package was perfect. We crafted emails with the photos and videos attached, each one personalized to the recipient. We wanted them to see the truth clearly, to understand the depth of the betrayal. As we worked, a part of me wondered if this was the right thing to do. But every time I thought about it, the images of Sandra and my father flashed in my mind. They had to face the consequences. They had to feel the pain they caused. Finally, everything was ready. Adele and I sat in front of her computer, fingers hovering over the send button. Are you sure about this? Adele asked, her voice softening for a moment. Once we do this, there's no going back. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. Yes, they need to know they can't get away with this. With a nod, Adele hit the send button. One by one, the emails went out, each one a bomb waiting to explode their carefully constructed lives. We watched as the progress bar moved, feeling a mix of anticipation and dread. The fallout began almost immediately. My phone started buzzing with messages from friends and family, each one a mix of shock, confusion, and anger. The calls came in, demanding explanations, expressing disbelief. I ignored them all, letting the reality of the situation sink in for everyone involved. That evening, I received a call from my father. I hesitated before answering, my heart pounding in my chest. Alex, he began, his voice strained and desperate. What have you done? What have I done? I echoed, my anger rising. What have you done, Dad? You betrayed me. You betrayed us. This is your mess, not mine. He was silent for a moment, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I never wanted this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I said, my voice breaking. You and Sandra both, and now everyone knows. Everyone knows what kind of people you really are. My father tried to plead his case, but I couldn't listen. I ended the call, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. This wasn't what I wanted, but it was what needed to be done. Later that night, I got a text from Sandra. Her words were a mess of apologies and excuses, trying to justify the unjustifiable. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. The news spread quickly, and the reactions were intense. Sandra and my father faced the consequences of their actions, their lives unraveling as everyone around them learned the truth. Adele and I kept our distance, watching from the sidelines as the chaos unfolded. It was painful, but it was also necessary. We had taken control, turned the tables, and made them face the reality they had tried to hide. As the dust began to settle, I found a strange sense of peace. The revenge was harsh, but it had also been a release. I could finally start to move forward, leaving the betrayal behind. And as Adele and I sat together, reflecting on everything that had happened, I knew we had done the right thing. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least now, we were free from the lies and deceit that had held us captive for so long. The aftermath of our revenge was both immediate and intense. The revelation of Sandra and my father's affair spread like wildfire, leaving a trail of shock and outrage in its wake. Friends and family were stunned, and the consequences were swift. I sat in my apartment, the silence heavy around me. My phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls, each one another reminder of the chaos we had unleashed. I ignored most of them, too drained to deal with the onslaught. Then, one afternoon, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find my sister, Vicky, standing there with a mix of anger and concern on her face. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice tight. "Sure," I replied, stepping aside to let her in. We moved to the living room, and I motioned for her to sit. "What's going on?" Vicky sat down, her eyes searching mine. "Why did you do it, Alex? Why did you have to go public like that?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Because they needed to be exposed, Vicky. They betrayed us. They deserved to face the consequences." She shook her head, frustration evident in her expression. "I get that, but did it have to be so? Public? It's a mess, Alex. Mom's devastated and Dad, well, he's a wreck." "I didn't mean to hurt Mom," I said, my voice softening. "But they hurt me, Vicky. They hurt us." Vicky's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out to squeeze my hand. "I know. It's just, everything's falling apart. I don't know how we're supposed to fix this." I looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. Maybe we can't fix it. Maybe we just have to find a way to move forward. As Vicky left, I felt a pang of guilt. The fallout was worse than I had anticipated, and the people I loved were caught in the crossfire. But there was no turning back now. The truth was out, and we had to deal with the consequences. A few days later, I got a call from my father. His voice was broken, and I could hear the pain and regret in every word. "Alex, can we talk?" he asked, his tone pleading. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. "All right, come over." When he arrived, he looked like a shadow of his former self. He sat down across from me, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I don't know where to start," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I messed up. I know that. But I never wanted to hurt you." "You did hurt me," I replied, my anger simmering just below the surface. "You and Sandra both. You betrayed my trust." "I know," he said, tears welling up in his eyes. "And I'm so sorry. I was stupid and selfish. I never thought about the consequences." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Finally, he looked at me, his expression one of desperation. "Can you ever forgive me?" he asked, his voice breaking. I took a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. "I don't know, Dad. It's going to take time. A lot of time. But I appreciate you coming here and admitting your mistake." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." As he left, I felt a glimmer of hope. It was a small step, but it was something. Maybe, just maybe, we could start to heal. Later that evening, Sandra showed up at my door. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked exhausted. "Alex, can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, stepping aside to let her in. We sat in the living room, the tension thick between us. "I don't even know where to start," she said, her voice cracking. "I messed up. I know I did. And I'm so sorry." I looked at her, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "Why, Sandra? Why did you do it?" She wiped away a tear, struggling to find the words. "I don't know. I was lonely, I guess. I felt neglected, and your father? He was there. It was a mistake, a huge mistake. You think? I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. You destroyed everything, Sandra. Everything we had. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, and I hate myself for it, but I still love you, Alex. I want to try and make things right. I sighed, feeling the weight of her words. It's not that simple. You broke my trust. It's going to take a lot more than words to fix that. I understand, she said, her voice barely a whisper, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Please give me a chance. As we sat there, I realized that the road ahead was going to be long and difficult. The fallout from their betrayal had left deep scars, and it would take time to heal. But maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for redemption, for rebuilding what had been broken. And as the night wore on, I found a small glimmer of hope in the midst of the chaos. It wasn't much, but it was a start, and sometimes that's all you need to begin again. The weeks that followed were a slow and painful process of healing. The initial shock and anger had subsided, leaving behind a raw, aching wound. But amidst the rubble, I began to see small signs of hope. One evening, I decided to visit an old friend, Mike. We hadn't spoken much since college, but he had always been someone I could rely on. I needed someone to talk to, someone who could offer a fresh perspective. I knocked on his door, feeling a bit anxious. When Mike opened the door, his face lit up with surprise and warmth. Alex, it's been ages, man. Come in, he said, pulling me into a bear hug. Thanks, Mike. I really needed this, I replied, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. We settled into his living room, and Mike handed me a beer. So what's been going on? You look like you've been through the ringer. I sighed, taking a sip of the cold drink. You have no idea. It's been a nightmare. Sandra and my dad, they were having an affair. Mike's eyes widened in shock. What? No way. I'm so sorry, Alex. That's just awful. Yeah, I said, my voice heavy with emotion. It's been really tough. But Adele and I confronted them, and now we're just trying to pick up the pieces. Mike nodded, his expression thoughtful. You know, it takes a lot of courage to face something like that head on. I'm proud of you, man. Thanks, I said, feeling a small spark of hope. I needed to hear that. As the evening went on, we talked about everything, our college days, old friends, and future plans. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of normalcy returning. Mike's easygoing nature and genuine support were exactly what I needed. The next day, I decided to take another step towards healing. I signed up for a painting class at the community center. Art had always been a passion of mine, something I had neglected in the chaos of recent events. It was time to reconnect with that part of myself. Walking into the bright, airy room filled with easels and canvases, I felt a sense of excitement and anticipation. The instructor, a kind woman named Lisa, welcomed me with a warm smile. Hi, I'm Lisa. It's great to have you here. Have you done much painting before? She asked. A bit, I replied, feeling a little nervous. It's been a while, though. Well, you're in the right place, she said, her smile reassuring. Just relax and have fun. This is all about expressing yourself. As I dipped my brush into the vibrant colors and began to paint, I felt a sense of peace and freedom. The worries and pain of the past few weeks started to fade away, replaced by the soothing rhythm of the brushstrokes. It was a small step, but it felt like a new beginning. A few classes later, I found myself chatting with one of my classmates, a woman named Emily. She was friendly and easy to talk to, and we quickly bonded over our love for art. Your painting is beautiful, she said, admiring my work. You have a real talent. Thanks, Emily, I replied, feeling a warmth in her compliment. I've missed this. It's been a rough time, and painting has been a way to escape. I understand, she said, her eyes filled with empathy. Art has a way of healing wounds we didn't even know we had. As the class ended, Emily and I walked out together, continuing our conversation. For the first time in a long while, I felt a connection with someone new, someone who didn't know about my past, but was willing to share my present. Over the next few weeks, I continued to rebuild my life, one small step at a time. Mike's support, the painting classes, and my new friendship with Emily all played a part in my healing process. Each day brought a little more hope, a little more light into my life. And as I stood in front of my latest painting, the colors blending together in a beautiful harmony, I realized that I was starting to find myself again. The pain was still there, but it was no longer overwhelming. I was beginning to see a future beyond the betrayal, a future filled with possibilities. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would still be difficult days ahead. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. And sometimes, that's all you need to start moving forward. A few months had passed since the confrontation and the chaos that followed. The pain was still there, but it was no longer a constant ache. I had started to rebuild my life, piece by piece, and now it was time to look forward to new beginnings. One sunny Saturday morning, I decided to take a walk in the park. The air was fresh, and the scent of blooming flowers filled the air. It felt good to be outside, away from the memories that had haunted me for so long. As I walked, I spotted Emily sitting on a bench, sketching in her notebook. She looked up and waved, a bright smile on her face. "Hey, Alex, over here," she called out. I walked over and sat down beside her. "Hey, Emily, what are you working on?" She showed me her sketch, a beautiful drawing of the park's landscape. "Just trying to capture this lovely morning. How about you? What brings you out here?" "I needed some fresh air," I said, looking around at the peaceful scenery. "It's been a while since I took the time to enjoy a simple walk." Emily nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "Sometimes it's the simple things that help us heal the most." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the moment. Then Emily turned to me, a serious look on her face. "Alex, I've been thinking. Have you considered moving somewhere new? A fresh start?" I looked at her, surprised. "I have, actually. It's crossed my mind more than once." "Maybe it's time," she said gently. "A new place, a new beginning. It could be exactly what you need." Her words struck a chord in me. A fresh start sounded both terrifying and exciting. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Leaving behind the painful memories and starting over could be the key to truly moving on. A few days later, I found myself standing in front of a for rent sign outside at a charming little apartment building on the other side of town. The building was old but well kept with a small garden in front. It felt like the perfect place to start anew. As I toured the apartment, I could already picture myself living there. The cozy living room, the sunny kitchen, the small balcony overlooking the garden, it all felt right. When I called Mike to tell him the news, he was thrilled. "That's awesome, Alex. A new place, a new beginning. I'm proud of you, man." "Thanks, Mike," I said, feeling a surge of gratitude. "I think this is exactly what I need." Moving day came quickly, and with the help of Mike and Emily, I settled into my new home. The first night in the apartment, I sat on the balcony, looking out at the garden below. The stars were bright in the sky, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. The following week, I invited Adele over for dinner. She had been a constant source of support through everything, and I wanted to show her my new place. As we sat at the kitchen table, enjoying a home-cooked meal, Adele looked around and smiled. "This place is perfect for you, Alex. I'm so happy to see you moving forward." "Thanks, Adele," I said, raising my glass in a toast. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," she echoed, clinking her glass with mine. Life began to take on a new rhythm. I continued my painting classes and spent more time with Emily. Our friendship deepened, and I found myself looking forward to our time together. She had a way of making everything seem brighter, more hopeful. One evening, as we were walking through the park, Emily turned to me, her eyes sparkling. "Alex, there's something I've been meaning to tell you." "What's that?" I asked, curious. "I've been offered a job in another city," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "It's a great opportunity, and I've decided to take it." A mix of emotions surged through me. I was happy for her, but also sad at the thought of her leaving. "That's amazing, Emily. I'm really happy for you, but I'll miss you." She smiled, taking my hand. "I'll miss you too, Alex. But this doesn't have to be goodbye. We can stay in touch, visit each other, and who knows, maybe you'll find your own adventure somewhere new." Her words gave me a sense of hope. "You're right. This is just the beginning for both of us." As we hugged goodbye, I felt a sense of closure. The past was behind me, and the future was filled with endless possibilities. Back in my apartment, I picked up a blank canvas and started to paint. The colors flowed easily, each stroke a reflection of my journey. It was a painting of new beginnings, of hope and healing. And as I worked, I realized that I was ready for whatever came next. Life was full of unexpected twists and turns, but with each challenge came a new opportunity to grow, to start over. I was finally ready to embrace my new beginning, with a heart open to the possibilities and a spirit willing to move forward. And that, I knew, was the greatest gift of all.